Hello and welcome to the session on Python built-in functions. Now we have seen how to define a function, but Python has a lot of built-in functions that add real value to this programming language. Let's look at a few of the more important ones. So the first one we'll be looking at is the enumerate function. Now the enumerate function adds a counter to any iterable that you give it, and you can specify a value where to start that iterable as well. So let's see the code example of how a enumerate function works. So let's say I have a list grocery where I'm passing three elements, bread, milk and butter, and then I want to create an enumerate grocery object. This object is going to be of the class enumerate, and we're going to pass the grocery, our variable, to it. So what we'll get in return is an enumerate object. So if we print the type of this object, we get the class that it belongs to, and that is enumerate. Now we can convert whatever we get to a list. So we write print type converted to list, and then we get the look of that enumerate object. So you can see each of the elements in my list has now got an additional feature with it, and that is the enumerate function at work. So we got 0, 1 and 2. It starts with 0 because we haven't specified anything here. So by default it's going to start with 0. But if we were to specify a number like 10, for example, then our enumeration would start at 10. So we got 10 bread, 11 milk and 12 butter. So this is how enumerate works. Now once you've got an enumerate object, there are two elements here now in each of these. So you can loop over the enumerate object. Let's go further and have a look about looping over an enumerate object. So the same list, grocery with bread, milk and butter. Now we could say for item in enumerate grocery. Now here we are creating the object right here and then enumerating, iterating over it. We print item. So each item is now a double item because it's got a number and the original element also. So we got a tuple 0 bread, another tuple 1 milk, and the third one 2 butter, according to whatever was created here. But we could also separate these out, as you know. So we can iterate twice, count and item separately in this same object. Because we have two of these, so we can label the first one as count, and that's up to you obviously what name you want to give it, and the second one as item. But this is more readable, so this works better. And then we print both of these. So now when we do this, these are separated out. So we got 0 separately, bread separately. Instead of being a part of a tuple separated by a comma, we are now taking each element individually and printing it. So this is what this line of code is doing. It tells you that the enumerate object is not a fixed thing. You can still take out values from it. Like any tuple, you can do that. And here, this is the same thing, but we are starting with 100 instead of not giving it any value at all. So when we start with 100, we get 100 for our bread, 101 and 102. So this is the way an enumerate object works. The second inbuilt function we are looking at today is called input. When you're running a Python program, input is a very good way to have the user interact with you. So input method takes whatever the user gives to the program, and then it can be used as a further argument for any function, or if you want to print something or things like that. So when you say input, it immediately opens up a prompt. Let's see the code. So input string is equal to input. What this is doing is it's running the input function, which will create the prompt, and then whatever is the result of this prompt, whatever you type in as a user, is going to go into input string. Let's run this now. So the moment I run it, we clear the previous value and we see that the prompt is there, and we type something. Let's say I would like to type hello. So I say hello, I press the enter key. Now it's printed out, the inputted string is hello. So this is the outcome of my effort here. Let me run it one more time. So now here you can see that I have to put in something, but I have no clue. Python has not given me any idea as to what is expected here. So we can use a prompt also with the input command, and this is, let's just enter it like that, blank, and come to example 2. Here we are using a string within the input parameter. So now this time when it runs, when it uses the input function, it's going to have a prompt saying enter a string. So when I run it, it tells me what is expected. It could be saying enter a phone number or enter a password or enter your name or anything at all. So we have an idea of what Python or the program is expecting as an input from us. Now if I say, let me give this 45 as a entrance. So it says the input string is 45. The important thing to note here is whatever you pass to input will be interpreted by Python as a string. So if you want to pass a number, well, you can do that, but Python will take it as a string. So in order to work further with that number, you would have to typecast it and convert it to an integer or a float or whatever you wish. So that conversion process has to be done by the user on whatever data has come in through the input field. So that's about input. The third and final function we are looking at today is the Python map function. Now map is a really useful function. What it does is it takes any iterable that you give it. It could be a list, it could be a tuple, anything. And on that iterable, it will apply a function to every single element and the results will be returned back to you. So say I want to calculate the square of a number, say square of 2. I know the square of 2 is 4, but I want to do it for a whole list of numbers. Then map is the way to go about it. And let's see a code example here and see how it works. Now take a look. So we have a function here. We have defined it as calculate square. So this function is a very straightforward function. It's going to take one input n, multiply that input by itself and then return it. So this is our function for calculating squares. Now let's see, we have a list of, or rather a tuple of numbers here, which are 1, 2, 3 and 4. We can use a tuple since that's an iterable. And in our result, we are going to store whatever comes from this. So now this is a line of code that we want to take a look at. Whatever comes out of this assignment is going to be stored in result and then we're going to print it. So what's happening here? We are calling the map function. We are giving it our function, which is calculate square. This is the function we defined right over here. And we are telling Python that look, I want you to take this iterable numbers, and for each element that exists in this iterable, I want you to pass that element to this function, and then whatever returns you get, I want you to put in the value called result. So when we run this function, this is what we get: 16, 1, 4 and 9. Right? Now Python has taken 1, squared it, given us 1 here. I'll tell you why this is happening. Then it's taken 2 and returned 4. Now this is not in order, and the reason that this is not in order is that, see, when you are returning something from a map function, what you get is an object, a map object. Now a map object can't be printed directly. So if you try to print result, you will get a map object at this location, memory location. This is not the thing that we are looking for. We want to get the values. So in order to get the values, we have to convert it to another object, such as a set or a list or a tuple. So here what we have done is we have defined a new variable and converted our result, which contained everything that the map object had. It had returned from our efforts. So this result contained the map object, but now we convert it to set. And because we converted it to set, we got this list in any arbitrary order, because remember, sets are not ordered. Let's change this. Let's make it a list. Now when we run it, since lists are ordered, we get it in sequence here. So this is how map works. Now maps, remember, maps take two arguments. They take a function and they take an iterable. But instead of a function, if it's something really straightforward like this, we could just pass it a lambda. So example 2 will take a look at how maps work with lambdas. If you recall from your lambda lesson, lambdas are functions without names and run on one single line. So a really tiny function like a square function can be very effectively used using a lambda function. So here we are running the same thing again. Numbers is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a tuple which we are going to pass to map. So we say result, where we will store the map object, equals map. Here's the actual mapping that's going to be carried out. So the function that we are going to pass to map, instead of the function we defined earlier, now we are going to pass it a lambda function. We'll say lambda x. So you take x and the return is x multiplied by itself. So this is a very, very straightforward lambda. What this line will do here is It'll tell Python, I need you to take x from this iterable. So every single element of this iterable will become x one by one. So first it's 1, then it's 2, then it's 3, then it's 4. And each of these numbers are going to be squared and returned, and the outcome of this is going to be stored in a map object, which will be here in result. Once again, if we print result, we only get the map object and its location. So that is not really helpful. We need to convert it to a better form. So we convert it to a set and we get this kind of a set. But if we would like to get back our things in a proper order, then a much better idea would be to convert it to a list. So the list will return it in the same sequence that it got it in. So this is how a lambda function can work with map. Now you could also pass multiple iterators to map. This is an interesting use of map. Take a look at how this works. So in this example, we have two iterables now. We have two lists. The first list, num1, is 4, 5 and 6. The second list, num2, is 5, 6 and 7. And now let's take a look at the form that our map function is going to take. So we have result to store the map object as earlier. We have the mapping function itself. We are passing it a lambda, and in the lambda we are telling it that now I want you to take two, n1 and n2. So these two variables, remember earlier we had just given it 1, x, but this time we are giving it 2, n1 and n2. And then I am telling Python through this lambda function that, look Python, I want you to take n1 and n2 and I want you to add them and return them. Now the question is, where do the n1 and n2 come from? So we have given it two iterables. We say take the first one from num1, second one from num2. This is how this line of code is to be read. So what's going to happen is, for the first time it hits lambda, it's going to take 4 from num1, 5 from num2, add them up together, and then we print it out. It's going to be 9. So this time we printed out list directly, therefore it's in sequence. So you can see 4 and 5 are added. Next number 5 and 6 are added, these two over here, and finally 6 and 7 are added to give you 13. So this is all for this particular session. We will return with part 2 of inbuilt functions, where we've got 3 more to do. Enjoy yourself, and I'll see you in the next lesson.